Okay. All right. So I don't think we need to do too many introductions, except we have one person who I don't recognize who hasn't been into the flipped classroom stuff. I'm going to put you on the spot. Have you been to any of the flipped classroom stuff? Or I'm trying to figure out how much of an intro we need to do about what we've been doing the last few days.
No.
No.
So yeah, I haven't been any. I read some of the material before I got here, but maybe not.
No worries. I'm just trying to get a sense of how much intro to do.
Interesting.
Yeah, some intro. I think, Pina, you should kick us off then. You're more familiar with what flipped classroom.
All right,
Yes.
folks. All right, so flipped classrooms, kind of the reverse of what we normally see when you go into a lecture and, there's a professor or lecturer speaking to learners, to student participants, and you kind of listen and maybe ask questions. What we're here to do is really have a conversation. We have a couple of, throughout the last 2 days, we've had 4 main topics that we focused on, and each of the topics had a series of questions that guided the conversation a little bit. But we saw over the last couple of days that the conversation can go many different directions. And that's the purpose of this. That's the goal. We want it to be as free-flowing as possible. So over the last, so if we look at kind of what we've learned and what we've heard over the last 3 sessions, because this is the 4th one, and it's a question about, from what we've heard, what have we missed? Who have we missed, right? So we spoke in the first session about artificial intelligence. And we spoke a lot about the algorithms and participations and engagement of persons with disabilities as these algorithms are being developed and how artificial intelligence is being used, right? And so there's some parked topics that we're gonna explore a little more. We're gonna go through them in a moment. We spoke about organizational and leadership. So how we integrate accessibility within organizations, and what is the role of leadership? What are the role of the people who are doing accessibility and integrating accessibility so it becomes part of the culture? And this morning we spoke about digital technology and assistive technology, and the conversation was, what should the manufacturers, the big folks such as the Microsofts, the Apples, and so on, the Googles and so on, what would be their role as we move forward in regards to making sure that there is more accessibility built into the systems and so on, and how would they better support innovation in assistive technology going forward rather than what they're doing today? So new ways of kind of researching and finding what people are needing. So this session, is as I said, we want to do a quick recap, but really talking about some of the things. So I'm gonna ask Wendy, who's right next to me and who is the facilitator for the session. And so we'll start with you and kick off this conversation on what you think has been missed, or what did you take away from these first 3 sessions?
Hello, everybody. Well, I think what is there conversation? No? All right. So my name is Wendy Chisholm. I am unaffiliated right now, which has been really a cool perspective. And so this is my first time after a 30-year career and then a 3-year absence of kind of coming back. And I think what I have been really interested in talking about is the community and how I guess the most provocative way I would kind of say it is the only thing that I didn't agree with in Carl's presentation was that I am so worried about the focus on independence. I think the most beautiful aspect of the disability community is our interdependence, and that the more independence is happening and the more people are alone and disconnected in general, humans in general, I'm talking humans in general, we're losing a lot of humanness. And I think we're losing a lot of just our juice.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure that, I mean, I want people to be independent and to do whatever you want to pursue, but I want to make sure that we all stay connected, and especially that my nervous system gets to connect physically with your nervous systems in places like this. And so despite all of the technology, I guess that's my biggest worry, is that I've been so involved in technology for 30 years. And, you know, the last 3 years I've been completely disconnected, not completely, you can't be completely disconnected in today's world. But, you know, I became a yoga teacher, and I have really just focused on the truth in my body and being present and, you know, meditating and all of that. And so I'm here to connect, and I just, with all the technology, how do we really keep that forward? And then to bring in Zuby's point, I think that's where our community innovates, is through that interconnection and interdependence. And how do we keep that going? So that's kind of my biggest thing that I feel has been not yet brought up.
Okay, so interconnectivity.
Yeah.
And supporting each other, yeah, okay. Good. All right, Natalie.
Howdy, y'all. My name is Natalie Patrice Tucker. I am also unaffiliated. Uh, Single and looking. As the kids say. You know, like the conversations that have sprung up over the last couple of days have just been deeply, deeply inspiring. And I agree with you that what's going to come out of this are the connections that we make and the conversations, how those conversations build up on each other. Of course, it's important that people get practical skills and tools and that sort of thing, but actually getting to see how your work relates to the disparate work of someone else you hadn't even known was doing work at all is pretty profound and important, especially right now, because there's a conversation for sort of breaking up that cohesiveness, that experience of community, that connectedness, right? And so what we know from other struggles for justice and you know, relatedness and relationship is that we must keep that connection on, or that focus on connection, and you know, not allow ourselves to get torn asunder, as it were. I think that's a piece that's, you know, missing. Is like, how do we make sure that this world that we're building, this world of digital products that work for everyone, and the concomitant systems that make that possible, how do we ensure that that's, you know, deeply coupled to corporate rights and, you know, indigenous rights and environmental rights and all the other things that are going on, in such ways that we're building whole systems that work for broad swaths of people, you know, and accessibility isn't sort of a specialized niche, but is like fully integrated in what we're up to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to answer the question a little differently because that's who I am. My name, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Pina Dentino. I am actually affiliated to the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. I also run my own consulting company, and so do a lot of work with organizations. But I think one of the things that I think we missed is the who. Who are we missing at the table? Who are we missing in this conversation? And we've had incredible, great services from ASL interpreters and captionists, but where is the deaf community? Why are they not coming? Why is the message not resonating for them to join this conversation, right? I think the other community that I'm always passionate about, and I want to make sure I learned so much from them, is the Indigenous community. And their challenges are extremely different from ours. I think that, bringing those people to the table is going to be incredibly important. International representation. We, again, sometimes see some of the same players at the table when we think about from an international perspective. I want to talk to countries who may, or states, people that are in countries that are not maybe as advanced as we are. And I always remember this lesson. I was doing work in banking. I always remember this conversation I had about mobile devices. And way back when, we did some research and we realized there were trillions of mobile devices in the world and whatnot. And in a country like Kenya, for instance, they don't use desktops the way we do. It's not uncommon for a person in Kenya to have 2 or 3 devices, mobile devices, to do what they need to do on a day-to-day basis. What can we learn from them? What are some of the things that they can teach us and we can teach them, right? So getting away a little bit from the arrogance that we know it all, because I think they can teach us a lot, right? So I think that's what I sort of feel like we've missed as a starting point. Can we turn it to the group?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So I know some of you who have participated in this and some of you have been following the session. We want to hear from you. So who wants to go? And don't let me pick on anyone.
I'm gonna just pass it around the room and just kind of hear from each of you.
Yeah.
What you
Say your name maybe, and just tell us what do you think we've missed? What are some of the your takeaways from these sessions?
Took the microphone away.
We're gonna have to share them.
Oh, I came in and took the microphone away.
Perfect.
Why did you take our mic? Please don't bring it back.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we'll have to pass that one. Okay. So start.
Would you like to start?
Sure.
You can just state your name.
I'm Jean Spellman, and I've been at all the sessions and I've received a great deal from it. And it's hard to pick out like one thing that we're missing. I very much enjoyed the perspective on AI. And I thought it was a very academic perspective that was new to me, because I hear a lot of technical things about AI, and it was very mentally stimulating to hear some of the more difficult things about AI and the challenges that we're facing there. I love the suggestion that I just blanked on his name. He had about how do we engage the open source community in AI? And that's one thing I would love to talk more about today. I think that would be a really interesting one.
Sharon, did you want to go next?
I'm Sharon Rush with Nobility, and I attended as many as I could, as long as I could, because this really was, for me, the heart and soul of how we could bring Access U to the next level. Because for 20 some years now, it's been a teaching conference where the experts show up and teach what they know and give people practical skills. And I think it served a really good purpose in doing that. And I don't think that we should necessarily stop doing that. But the way of engaging the next generation, I was really fascinated hearing from Monica about working with Michael Burville and the fact that he's so young and he has an entirely different approach to how are we going to organize even conversations in our community that there's a framework and hi, Terry, are you here to solve all our problems or to bring us some more? So what are we doing? No, but I think we've got these two tech guys in here. Are they solving a problem for us? Are we having trouble with our remote or something? Okay, so we're good. Anyway, I think I would very much like to learn more or consider more about that. Remember, Wendy, when you and Lainey and I did that panel on eldering? And that was, a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And we were trying to think about how do we pass the torch to the next generation. And then Monica had that experience working with Michael, where the tools are different, the expectations are different. And when I had lunch with Michael today with his scholars that he, and I said, we started Knowbility in 1999. And he said, that's the year I was born. So I think one of the things I would like, and I totally, Pina, I'm with you all the way about Native people, getting Native Americans more involved, Native groups. I think Accessible Canada, Accessible World did that really, really well. And other kind of underrepresented cultural groups, but also that bridging the gap between those of us who've been doing it for so long and the ones who are coming along and the new tools that they use. And I think the open source movement is also going to be a big part of that. Thank you.
Josh Hetrick, and in a lot of ways, I think I'm maybe more the beneficiary of the answer to this question, because I hold most of the privileges, that you can have. And so asking me personally, like who's left out, like I'm sort of have maybe the most things in my way that keep me from knowing the best answer to that question. But, I think the one group that I've sort of maybe been exposed to more recently has been like a family member who's, aging and has recently had surgery. And so their sort of mobility has changed, and sort of you're on that line of, you don't necessarily, you have a lot of access needs, but you don't necessarily identify as, say, being in that, being disabled or being, it's not really, it's just something that's kind of happening over time. And so it's like, how do you bring those perspectives in and kind of help serve people who are kind of on that line of moving towards the, maybe more permanent access needs. And also, +1 to everything that's been said. Just kind of like what does someone know about, they might say, like, they might just find it hard to use their phone now, but they don't know that there are options available to them. It hasn't been sort of socialized as a broader thing. It's like, if it's not in the setup instructions during your phone, if they don't give you that option of make the screen a little bit bigger or not, all those other great options, they don't know about them. They never go digging around in the settings looking for those. Like, there's this whole world of access things that can make their life better, but they just don't know about it.
Thanks. It's Monica. What did I get out of the session? What did I learn? So much. I won't repeat what other people have said, but one of the things that really caught me is that the conversations went from tactical, practical to philosophical on the same topic. And that really enriched the entire conversation. The conversations went broad and differing, and yet still focused on that common goal of inclusion and disability access. And the depth of experience of everybody in this field, like we don't even know what we've got here sometimes. And how do we make sure that I'm gonna call us the elders, that we're not, our knowledge isn't lost, but it's also not condescendingly delivered to a next generation. And I think that that's a real opportunity with these these kinds of conversations where everybody has something to say. So that's a little of what I got out of the experience.
Hi, I'm Jeff Klein. I'm an independent accessibility consultant, but been working in public and private sector and accessibility for a couple of decades. One of the big problems, I don't think anybody's really discussed it here, is we seem to still be spending a lot of time in the echo chamber talking to each other about accessibility and not getting the level of awareness out into the places in the world and the IT ecosystem where people don't know what they don't know about accessibility. And I think that, continues to be a challenge. I don't have an answer for it. But all the accessibility conferences and webinars and everything tends to be all of us kind of talking to each other. And I don't know how to, to break out of that per se. I think that might be something that would be worth a new kind of a session. Somebody should come in and maybe we get some outside help and figure out how we can best do that. Or, maybe there's work going on that I haven't had visibility to. I mean, I don't see everything that everybody's doing all the time, but I feel like I'm pretty well informed about what's going on in digital accessibility. Okay.
The other thing I want to do is maybe do accessibility as a form of separate event. Because I think right now it's being seen as something that we go into as a profession outside of that, right?
Yeah. Thanks. We had and your question was, should accessibility be kind of partitioned as a separate skill area as opposed to maybe broadening the reach for more individuals to practice in accessibility without being siloed in accessibility. Would that be a good way to feed it back? Yes. The answer is, in my opinion, is yes. We had a brief talk about that yesterday, kind of after the session. And I think there's a place for both. And I think we all agreed there was a place for both. We need the high level accessibility architects or SMEs at the high level of an organization. Of course, some organizations may or not be able to do that because of the scale. And then the programmers or the content developers or whoever it is needs to have the appropriate level of accessibility skills for the platforms that they're using for their development environments, to understand how to program it, and then obviously how to test what they've written. Yeah. Oh, and I had one other point I wanted to make. One of the things that we haven't really talked about here, and I think it's it's something that it's kind of the elephant in the room, is we know there's almost everything out there, even after all this time, is not very accessible. I could point to maybe a handful of products or services that are fully compliant. So we know compliance is not, it's a lofty goal, but may or may not ever be 100% achievable. But what we have to do is organizations have to understand when they're buying or developing something that's not accessible, what is that they need to be able to have leadership in the organization understand what they're doing, and that this does not comply, and that it can create, disparate things for other people with disabilities. English is a second language and everything. And knowing what that means in terms of legal ramifications and even business ramifications. Who's out there in these organizations who's accepting the risk for that? So what I'm really talking about is making sure that how do organizations have kind of what we would call an exceptions process or a risk acceptance process, so that, you know, some executive says, okay, yeah, I understand that this is, you know, this is risky, and somebody gives them the all data, and then they make the decision yay or nay based on, you know, whatever their specific circumstances are. I think there needs to be some more discussion about that, because almost everything is not accessible, and it's just kind of matter of fact, it just keeps going, but there's really no accountability at the organization level for accepting the risk of that happening.
Yeah.
Okay, so hi, it's Rochelle. I think for me, kind of two things. The first is, for a variety of reasons, I haven't been thinking as strategically about AI as I need to be. And so this was a good chance to kind of revisit it without some of the biases I know I carry towards it. So I think starting to think about how it can really help the community in a variety of different ways, not just the obvious ones, has been a really big takeaway for me. And the other one is I really, what you said earlier, Wendy, resonated about thinking about community and thinking about how do we think about connection in addition to independence. I think that's a really powerful question, and I appreciate that takeaway.
So one thing I've been thinking a lot about myself recently as well is also being unaffiliated at the moment. Is that, you know, just a lot of these kind of decisions we talk about, you know, who's making the decisions and everything, is it comes down to, you know, imbalanced power structures in general, which affects a lot of things, but certainly access. And just, you know, how are the companies arranged? Like, you know, do workers have a say in what's getting done in their companies? There might be tons of workers who want to do this stuff, you know, and just it's not happening. And so just all the way down to, you know, political and economic power structures have a huge impact on who gets to even be considered in the conversation. And so I think that's ultimately a really important part of it, and building solidarity across all of those lines so that, you know, no one is left out.
Coming at you with the mic. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we dig in, that is a good summary. So it feels like one way to kind of combine all of these into a single conversation is how do we infuse the work and community in AI so that maybe that's kind of the focus to pass along some of this stuff and to change the power structures and who gets to participate. Does that cover all of it?
I love it.
But really, I mean, it feels like that. And so a couple of people, I think I've missed it. When you talk about the open source and AI, what is the opportunity or the issue there?
I
Yeah.
mean, from you can you can right now build and train your own LLMs. There are, you know, there are tools. I'm sorry. All right, you can kind of create your own ChatGPT around either a specific niche or your own corpus of work. if you have the time and exceeding levels of resistance to frustration that it takes, it is a possible thing to do. And and I was looking at it a while ago because I was like, oh, I'm unemployed now. I'll just, whip up an LLM that does, helps people through the WCAG guidelines, and we can achieve world domination that much quicker. Yes, more about that another time. But I'm saying that insofar as the tools are becoming possible to make it easier, or the path is more possible for individual people to create their own tools with AI, then that means that we need to federate the information about ethics, the information about accessibility, in the same and similar ways. It's the same conversation, which is how to get my conversation as part of the dominant conversation about this particular thing, or ensure that there's not a gap here that disadvantages, folks along the way. And I think that, because things are shifting all over the place, it creates these cracks, these opportunities for new ways of being, new ways of thinking that we have to lean into, and we have to sort of play with and be prepared for if what we want, I'm very clear about what I want. You will hear me use the word world domination all the time, but what I mean is a web that works for everyone, no holds barred, no no kidding. And it's a big enough goal that it's going to take something to make it happen, and one of those something is unconventional thinking, or outside of the box, outside of the box, but playing in ways that we aren't right now. And so inside of that, what's missing, I think sometimes we're still thinking inside of the boxes that we have. We're like, how do we change this inside of this box? Actually, the box is the problem, how do we, yeah, get rid of the box. Can I give it to Monica? Is that okay? No.
I love what you're saying. This is Monica. And it made me think about the fragility of this ecosystem. By embedding accessibility in everybody's job, that creates something that is stable. But the fragility of when I hear everybody saying, I'm currently unattached, unaffiliated, have we chosen to leave our jobs? Have we burnt out of our jobs? Have our jobs gotten rid of us? That's really fragile. And if we're dependent upon on our ability to stay employed to advance accessibility, then that's really going to limit us. If we're caught in the, only nonprofits do this, then that's also going to affect our ability to affect that world domination. So what do we do about that?
Revolution. Sign me up.
Yeah, I guess so. Let's get rid of the box. So this is where I get to segue into the Serviceberry.
Yes.
Natalie's setting me up here. Okay, so there's this book called The Serviceberry. Have anybody read it or heard about it? Do you know who Robin Wall Kimmerer is? So she wrote Braiding Sweetgrass. She is an indigenous botanist. And so she has been looking at economies from a botanist perspective and from this indigenous perspective, which is just really awesome. And so the way that she's described it in this book, actually, can I read a clip? Here. It's called The Serviceberry. And so she writes a couple different, I I have this 13-page essay. It's a 100-page book and I wrote a 13-page essay about it. So what she's talking about is basically a sustainable way forward that is a gift economy. And she says, whether it's harvested directly from the forest or whether it's mediated by commerce and harvested from the shells of a store, it all comes from the earth. When we speak of these not as things or natural resources or commodities, but as gifts, our whole relationship to the natural world changes. And then she describes her vision of the future. But what's really cool about all of this is that she talks about in her culture, they have this idea of a Wendigo. And so a Wendigo is kind of a person who hoards things. And their measure of success is in who shares the most. And so the abundance is something that, I don't know, there's too many quotes in here, but she says, I cherish the notion of a gift economy, that we might back away from the grinding system, which reduces everything to a commodity and leaves most of us bereft of what we really want. A sense of belonging and relationships and purpose and beauty, which can never be commoditized. I want to be part of a system in which wealth means having enough to share, and where the gratification of meeting your family needs is not poisoned by destroying that possibility for someone else. I want to live in a society where the currency of exchange is gratitude and the infinitely renewable resource of kindness, which multiplies every time it's shared rather than depreciating with use. It is within our power to create such webs of interdependence, quite outside the market economy. And the last thing I'll just say is maybe that's how we extract ourselves from a cannibal economy. Intentional communities of mutual self-reliance and reciprocity are the wave of the future, and their currency is sharing. So that is what's inspiring a lot of my thinking. And so I think what's really interesting right now is whether by choice or not, so many of us are stepping out of this extractive economy. And the book is talking about how plants, there are often these initial plants that are very greedy and intrusive, and they take over a new area. But when they've eaten up all the resources, the next wave of diversity that comes after that is where the sustainability is. And that's where you get these really amazing biodiverse, sustainable systems. Yeah.
I'm
So
gonna
anyway,
be provocative.
Okay.
All right. So, or kind of pushing you. So first thing I want to say, I guess that's, I shouldn't fight my husband when he says I need to eat dandelions, right? All right, then. Okay, so if we think about what Monica mentioned about, not burning out, all that wonderful thing, we think about your experience, taking those 3 years off to kind of reflect, the book. Natalie, your point about, engagement and making sure that, we are collaborating. I would love to hear from both of you as to how we can take some of these problems. So we said we're a strong network of individuals. We're ready to give to a certain extent. We're ready to share the knowledge, the experience that we've all acquired over the years, but we're not ready to be erased from the equation, if that makes sense, right? So how do we do that? How do we do that transition to the next generation, as we said, in a way that we take this gift that we've all been given and we move it down the line or teach about it down the line?
Natalie, all right.
Natalie, you take it.
And then we can,
Okay, I think that inherently, like one of the pieces I got out of what you read is that, inherently, a gift is sustainable. It is it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think back to the Middle Stone Age when I began this work, and what I wanted was, I was like, I honestly thought that it would take me a couple years to work myself out of a job, because once people heard about this, they would be on fire about it because it's the coolest stuff ever. And so I think that, you know what, quite honestly, what does that mean if I work myself out of a job? What does that get to look like? Maybe that's the maybe that's the thing, right? Maybe that's the thing, is that outside of, you know, how do we get to dismantle what is, you know, inhuman, is by creating something that is deeply inherently human. How we cause our systems to be sustainable, so that the, you know, the gifts and talents of everyone, from those who are, you know, like brilliant at the code, to those who are not able to communicate, you know, with spoken language at all, get to contribute, you know, to a world that works for everyone, right? And the extractive processes, it currently create sort of vision silos about what's possible. And so we need to get to work, build some muscle at, you know, keeping each other alive and healthy and thriving. And as we are creating the systems that will make that possible, you know, you know, I feel like I'm getting a little far flung, but I think it's important that we look at, you know, the sort of brass tacks that undergird some of the assumptions that we have about our work and how our work is set up, maintains the system that makes it necessary for us to have that work. And I think we need to, you know, because, you know, like I was thinking, we were talking in the last, another flipped about leadership, and you can get into the, you know, into the C-suite, into leadership, without really having any exposure to usability, to people. Yes. Right. And I, you know, it's rarer that there are, you know, leadership roles that have come up through that, you know, like I see the TEM to, you know, a process where you've been in the direction, worked with people, you know what shitty is, you know what great is. And, you know, like, but there's also counter forces in terms of what's considered a successful business and how we reward success. All of those conversations get to come into play, right? Right.
So what does the accessibility professional, what does an accessibility professional look like in 2035? We had asked that question yesterday. So we have the experience of, you know, passing on to the new generation and the differences. And I spoke about their expectation and the way they learn, the way they transact, the way that they communicate is so different from the way that we actually build a lot of these notions around accessibility, a lot of the frameworks around accessibility. How do we break out of this box and feel that, and not feel, I guess, betrayed, or maybe like see it as you said, something as a gift that we want to pass on?
All right, you just got the answer.
No. It's part of the process. The inquiry is part of the process, I think. You know, distinguishing that you are in a box is a very important part of being able to, you know, call out. And if you're doing the work, you're always seeing the box. You're always seeing how you're hemmed yourself in and what ways you're, you know, or looking. You're always at least looking.
So I just have a thought. I don't know, it might be provocative or not. It's the inside the box and working inside the box. And, you know, we talk about a really supportive community. It isn't always very supportive. It can be really mean, especially if you disagree with something. And so I think those disagreements are healthy if they are done in a healthy, constructive manner. But accessibility people can be kind of rough on each other. And that's not advancing that broader, or that openness for others to come into it and to grow the field. So be kind.
Here's the microphone for you. Yeah, there was something that Jeff said, and I'm trying to remember now what it was that I wanted to comment on. But Jeff, you have a lot of history in the creation of this framework, you know, how we approach, I remember now, how we approach accessibility and, you know, the conversation between the subject matter and the business. I'm wondering if one of the reasons why we continue to find ourselves in this cycle is because we continue to speak to us, to the converted. How do we get accessibility in the mind of the businesses, in the education? What do we need to do to make them partners in this equation? Anyone?
I'll take the next one. Thank you. Excuse me.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that I have an answer for that. Yeah, I mean, that's really the challenge. What's the incentive? Is the incentive do the right thing? Is the incentive empathy? I think we've all seen cases where when leadership has a disability or there's somebody that's close to them that has a disability, I mean, they really are able to drive a lot of progress within those organizations. But, you know, barring that, I feel like we probably have to sit down together and maybe talk with some of the leadership that does understand accessibility and see how we could, or they could help, you know, permeate the IT marketplace. I think public sector, you know, we're already, they're pretty attuned, you know, worldwide. There's regulations, whether they, you know, try to different levels of emphasis on how well and how quickly they try to do something about it. But they all depend on the private sector for their products and services. And, you know, unless, and I hate to say this because, you know, it's the carrot and the stick, but unless somebody's taken food out of their mouth because, you know, they've lost a bid because they don't have accessibility when it's a requirement, or there's a regulation that's being driven and the people in public sector, don't take their information at face value. You know, I wish I had a nickel for every time I saw a submission to a bid where it says, oh yeah, we understand accessibility and we will make sure our products will comply with WCAG, blah, blah, blah. And it's, it's meaningless because they haven't provided what we've asked for, which is, you know, an ACR, or I have a couple of other tools that I use to, you know, to try to pull out what their levels of knowledge are. But I guess I'm rambling here a little bit, but yeah, I mean, there has to be this connect where if the public sector, I think, can drive a lot of it because the products and services the public sector uses, everybody uses. If they could really start to take it more seriously. What did Eve say yesterday? 50% of the federal bids didn't care about accessibility, something like that. And until we can get people taking it more seriously, I mean, that will help drive the people that are building the products. And that's who you really have to. So it's really, I mean, that's why I've spent so much time in procurement. It's really a procurement issue in a lot of ways. They lie. That's right. They lie. Let's not sugarcoat it.
Hey, excuse me. Oh, okay.
So I hope I don't ramble about it because I'm tired. But through this last couple of days, I had a bunch of thoughts that are just starting to pull together. A lot of them are related, not surprisingly. From the leadership side and the connection side. Conferences like this, the reason I'm here and I don't go to CSUN anymore is because this conference feeds me. And, you know, I feel the connection. I'm with my tribe. You all give me inspiration and joy and connection and love. You know, I belong here. And I think that's something really important to give our brothers and sisters in the trenches who don't have that. And I think that's an area to continue to explore of how do we feed the middle people. Monica and I think you and I were talking about how there's old timers in this field and there are brand new people in this field, and where's the middle?
Yes,
Absolutely. They've all quit. They worked out, they're gone. We blew an entire generation of professionals who left this field. So I think that connection that we have is crucial for holding ourselves through this and bringing up a new generation. Mentoring is incredibly important. And it's sad to see women I've mentored not be here. And I'd like to turn that around. So we can, let me just finish, because I have one more part that I think is tied into this that's really important. Out of the discussion in AI, we talked about what is the new thing we need to be as accessibility professionals. And it stirred up a lot of thoughts, and I was thinking about it a lot last night. Is that the strategy, the strategists, the leaders, the people that say, can go into the corporation and say, this is your business, and this is how accessibility is going to help your business, college, help you deal with the professors that want to do academic freedom instead of captioning. You know, whatever the problem is in the department you are, we need to be figuring out and teaching each other. These are the skills we need. Like Wendy, when you said the other day that the guy at Microsoft who said, no, you need to learn to be a program manager.
Yeah.
That's a skill set that we need and we can continue to pass on and support people, because with that skill set, that could free us from the glass ceiling of the accessibility CEO. Because program managers go all the way to the top. And so I think it solves a lot of problems. And I will say again, I'm the person that jumps to solutions whenever you see me. My brain just started spinning out these things, but I've been hearing that connection of all of these things are starting to pull together in my my head, that we have some real concrete things that we can do. And it is all tied to our connection with each other. That is so special. To So now it's
No, that's a great point. And I think again, it ties to what does our role look like as we move forward. So we talked about maybe we, collectively, those of us who are in this space, can be coaches, can be mentors, right? But I think that our programs, like there were programs, for instance, like empowering women in STEM, as an example. You know, do we need empowering individuals in accessibility? Do we need program, like, any idea? I mean, there are certification programs. I'm wearing the IAAP hat to some extent today. And, are programs like that enough? What more do we need to your point? I don't know that we're going to get that middle generation back at this point, but I think that there's huge opportunity to form the next generation, right? And how do we do that?
And sort of thinking about, like who's next and who follows. I think we also need to, sort of bear in mind that being young doesn't make you necessarily new to the field, and being, old doesn't necessarily make you an elder inside of the work. There are folks who are who find themselves along that continuum, like outside of those paradigms. And what we're looking to do is really, connect folks where they are to the resources that will have them join the army that will take on the world domination of it all. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Following on Jean and Natalie, so if we can be identifying some of the future skills, then I'm sure we can find curriculums about those. What is strategic influencing? What is project management? And could we then use that with what is project management in accessible? What is strategic influencing in accessible? And it just kind of adds a little, that experiential, okay, here you've got this concept and you've got these tactics that you can apply, but broaden that.
Well, I think that goes back to what Jeff was saying about, like going into the places that you're not expected, or like, how do we find ourselves? Like, I know it's random, but I've been thinking a lot about how do we get are the tools that folks use to build construction projects, are they accessible? Like, could you be a program manager for a construction process and have mobility issues, have like I mean, think about these things, and it's like, in order to break into that software realm, they're not going to come to my conference. I'm going to need to go to the International Association of Construction Planners conference and be like, you know what, you might be able to hire a whole nother caliber of project manager if you're thinking about the tools that you're using. These are how we're evaluating tools, slip accessibility. Well, that's important, like make an in run around it. Does it make any sense?
Natalie.
Yeah.
Oh,
so that's sort of where I was going with my question earlier when we say, are we talking to the converter, to your point? Because are we getting out of that box we talked about? We're going to industries. Are we going to trades? Are we going like, who are we trying to influence? Because at this point, we're only influencing a small group, and there's so many more opportunities out there. To your point, I actually did try to infuse accessibility in the project management the world, and they came back and said accessibility wasn't mature enough. Huh? What? So I'd love to see, something project management and accessibility happen for sure, right? But I think the reality is that if we can sell that what you learn as a project manager are the same disciplines in some ways, like, so you're following the same kind of teaching as you do for a project management and accessibility, except that you have now an added value to what you have. I think it would go a long way. And to your point about the tools, Yeah, I mean, this goes far beyond, trades. It goes back to, even washing machines and stoves and whatnot, right? I mean, how do we influence these manufacturers to do better, right? And to be in front of them and have these conversations and say, hey, train your folks as well to understand accessibility, right? Because there's value here for you and there's value for your employee. Wendy, you've been quiet. Your turn.
I don't think that's because you're not gonna like what I have to say.
One of the things we said is that we were interchanging our roles. So be the provocateur.
Okay, I'll say it maybe a bit more provocatively than I really feel it, but I'm so fucking tired of trying to convince people to do accessibility that I just don't think that's what I'm not going to do anymore.
Yeah, right.
Because we've been talking about it for 30 some years. And I am at the point where I only want to focus on what I can control.
Preach on it.
And so I think that's why the service berry resonates with me so much, is because what she talks about is that we have this market economy, but we can have gift economies that coexist. And eventually these gift economies can overtake. They can, you know what I mean? We just keep growing our own economies until the other one burns out. And then it's like, what do we do now? And we're like, oh, well, we have this answer. And I think it goes to part of what Zubi is talking about, but every time I have seen accessibility work in a corporate environment, it has been completely watered down and bastardized, and the dial moves, but it's maintaining the box.
Yeah.
And I'm just so tired of that. And I think, and I don't want to call this an echo chamber. I think that devalues the power that we have here and the community that we get here and the charge that we get here. And that's why I'm here after 3 years, was that I missed my tribe, and that I don't want to talk to another person who doesn't care about accessibility. And I mean, that's just, and I know that that's not realistic, and but maybe I can help support the folks who are, because I have been that one accessibility person on the team pushing that rock up the hill, and realizing that the only reason I could do that for 30 years was by coming to places like this. So I don't.
Power to us.
Yeah, and I think going back to what Zubi said, I think we have so much power. We have so many ideas. Like, why don't we just build our own stuff? Who cares what they're doing?
Listen, come on. Now you're speaking my language. And in our conversations to begin, this, we had some, knocked out, drag out conversations that were so good, because we're all like, I've been doing this since the beginning of the dawn of time. And I am not fighting for my humanity with anybody. And I'm not fighting for my fellows' humanity with anybody either. You're either doing your job or you're not doing your job. Your job involves building shit that works. Your shit does not work. Let's get to that part. And of course, there's messenizations. You got to figure it out, blah, blah. That's the fun part. That's why you're doing this.
And this is
But-
why we thought we were the right team for this conversation.
Here, and I think we should explore it.
Yes.
Is we're starting to develop what are the things that we won't do anymore.
It's very sexy.
There's another website ever. I'll go and push the rock uphill with the, the CEOs. I enjoyed that one. But test another website? No.
Right.
Don't make me. It's
Right.
seeing job offers that are online testing websites.
Right.
All of us.
Right.
I do.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Looks like, okay, what am I never going to do?
Yeah.
What are you gonna stop?
Oh, this. Oh my God.
Put that on the unconference session, what we're going to not.
I'm
Of course, we might not be able to talk about it that long.
So I think one of the other, Josh speaking, is that I guess the other thing that I get fired up about is like transportation related things, because I bike around, which immediately makes you a bike activist, because you see the world the minute you start biking on into. There's a lot of parallels to the dynamics of things, like we have things like city policies that very clearly outline what exactly we want, what we're supposed to value, and then they just don't follow them, and the project is built, like just. And you see this kind of over and over again. So in some ways, I think, there's the bridging gaps with other groups, and it's also like learning / commiserating from the same struggles with other groups, which I think kind of comes back to this larger question of binding together towards a kind of common goal. But there's one thing, and it kind of speaks to like the finding your tribe at a conference like this. One of the things about Portland in particular that's really amazing is that they have this extremely active like social bike scene where there's people just get together to like just do stuff all over the place. Like there's things happen all the time, and it's very much that like it's not my revolution if I can't dance sort of mentality. It really helps you, because a lot of the people are also the dyed-in-the-wool activists who are out there, hammering on the same city councilors over and over again or whatever, but you're out there also like having that joy with your crowd. Kind of, if nothing else, sustain you, but also it kind of just shows the world you want to exist. Like you just kind of make the world you want to exist.
Yes.
And I think one of the most powerful examples I've seen in recent past in the concept of a bike bus sort of kind of took off nationally to some extent, but very popular in Portland at the moment, where it's instead of getting on a school bus and going there, walking, they get together
As a community.
teachers or adult volunteers, and they just lead the group of kids on a bike, and it's like it learns habits young, it gets people together, like you need all these positive effects of it, and that sort of concept. I don't know what the exact burden of the bike bus is for the accessibility world, but it's a really sort of instructive thing, and no one really like organized it or funded it. It just kind of started happening, and like it kind of proliferated. And so that also is really powerful to me. Like those things that you have a lot of attempts for things like that to get something to strike and gain momentum, but when you do, they can really explode. So it's always a struggle to find out what the next one is, but it's powerful when you see it.
I think it's Rochelle, you said something about no, sorry, Jean, you said something about the charity model, right? Saying stop doing fundraisers for like that, kind of continue to see disability as a charity model. Right? Fundraising is we need to, whatever.
We need fundraising, not fundraising.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do some fundraising. Exactly. I think that's another thing to me is like, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to put myself in that box where people look down at me because I'm disabled, or because they see me like I need help because I'm disabled, right? No. So absolutely. All right. Well, thank you. We're good. All right. I think we're out of time. You want to close? We're out of time. Ice cream. Oh, ice cream is at 4?
The ice cream's there right now.
Oh, well, we want to go for ice cream.
The ice cream is there until,
Oh,
but she just said,
okay. So do you guys want to?
take a little break.
Yeah, we take a little break and we come back. Okay. Yeah.
You want to wrap up and wrap up?
Let's wrap up.
Okay. Well, all right.
This conversation is
Do you have your mic?
oh, sorry. Is enlivening, and I don't want us to stop. I kind of want it to be sort of like we trail off and it never ends in a particular kind of way, so that the conversation regenerates and renews. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It was Utah and Tina and Successful Canada
Mhm.
and the world that really got it started.
Yeah.
We just said,
Yeah,
ooh,
Yeah.
I like this.
yeah. Yeah, and I love the idea that like, this is a conversation that we can pick up and maybe I'll run into Monica at another thing or a totally unrelated thing, or, like I'll send, Wendy a an email, oh, I read this book that relates to what you were saying, and that it just keeps sort of expanding and showing up in different places organically. I think it's deeply, deeply necessary. And that's how we get to bring people in.
So let's continue.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, here you go.
So let's continue this as Sharon, you said, the next Accessible Canada Accessible Conference is taking place in 2026. I'm gonna say this right, in Winnipeg, at the Human Rights Museum, right? And so we have an opportunity. Okay, guys, we have an opportunity to meet again before the conference comes back to Canada. So I really would love us to make sure that we build on this momentum and see what we can say and prepare for next year, right? Okay, so everybody's back. That's right. Let's reconvene at Access U.
My nervous system can't go that long without everybody.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, like, we don't have to wait for the conference. Let's have a Zoom. Let's continue the conversation. Come back again at Access U, and then hopefully lots of you can come also to Canada, because we'd love to have you there. But yeah, but absolutely. Thank you.